On the surface, life inside a cartel looks like power, money, and control. But the moment the cuffs click, the fall is brutal and fast. What happens when the most feared men alive are told they'll never taste freedom again? In this episode, we witness cartel and criminal figures crumble when the sentence hits. And if you ask around, people still get tense at the mention of Guzman Lopez, El Chapo's son. But now, all eyes are on him as he stands before the court, facing the weight and reacting to his life sentence.
Jorge Eduardo Costilla Sanchez. Whenever Mexico's most terrifying drug lords come up in conversation, it's always the usual suspects: El Chapo, El Mayo, El Mano. But behind the headlines is a name most have never heard: Jorge Eduardo Costilla Sanchez. Born on the 1st of August 1971 in Tamaulipas, Mexico, Costilla didn't come from the usual path of crime. In fact, he started out like many ordinary citizens, working a steady job in local government. But all it took was the wrong set of friends and a few dark choices for his life to take a turn most wouldn't dare consider. By the late 1990s, Costilla had slipped quietly into the inner circles of the Gulf Cartel. His rise wasn't accidental, it was strategic. He developed a close alliance with the cartel's leader at the time, Osiel Cardenas Guillen. Osiel recognized something dark in him, a taste for control and a dangerous willingness to spill blood to keep it. One day, the cartel's inner circle stumbled upon two men poking around, undercover DEA agents. The instinct? Eliminate them. But the agents didn't beg for their lives. They gave a warning. Killing United States federal officers would invite fire from Washington like nothing the cartel had ever seen. Surprisingly, they let them go. Fast forward to mid-March 2003, Osiel was captured in a blazing gunfight with Mexican authorities. Just like that, leadership fell into Costilla's hands. But instead of taking the throne alone, he attempted something risky, sharing power with Osiel's brother, Antonio, and a few other cartel bosses. Ego, ambition, and distrust ripped through the Gulf Cartel like wildfire. Internal battles soon spiraled into open warfare, especially with Los Zetas, their once loyal enforcers who turned rogue. What followed was not just a falling out, it became one of the deadliest cartel conflicts Mexico had ever seen. Eventually, all the bloodshed caught up with him. On a quiet 12th of September 2012, Costilla was finally cornered and arrested in Tampico. He didn't resist. No bullets, no chase, just silence, like a man who had seen the final chapter coming. Strangely, few even knew what he looked like. Only 2 photos of him existed publicly. The rest of his identity lived in whispers. Then came the endgame. In 2015, he was extradited to the United States. During the handover, he sat there blank-faced, no emotion, no protest, just the heavy stillness of a man who knew he'd lost the game. A United States court handed him a life sentence, and just like that, one of Mexico's most shadowy and feared cartel bosses vanished with the cold echo of a prison door shutting behind him.
Miguel Ángel Félix Gallardo. He wasn't loud, he wasn't flashy, but he was the reason Mexico became ground zero in the global drug war. Long before Mexico was synonymous with cartels and kingpins, one man quietly laid the foundation for everything that would follow. His name was Miguel Ángel Félix Gallardo. Born on January 8, 1946, in the town of Bella Vista, Gallardo didn't fit the mold of the stereotypical drug boss. He didn't grow up in the gutters or fight his way out of poverty. He finished high school, studied business in college, and appeared to be on a path to a decent career. After finishing school, he joined the Mexican Federal Judicial Police. Before long, he became the personal bodyguard to the governor of Sinaloa, Leopoldo Sanchez Celis. That job came with far more than a paycheck. It opened doors, giving him deep ties within Mexico's political elite. With powerful allies and protection from above, Gallardo saw a unique chance to build something massive. By the 1970s, he had founded the Guadalajara cartel. While others were still figuring out how to move product, he forged partnerships with Colombian traffickers who supplied the drugs. Gallardo handled the logistics, smuggling vast amounts into the United States. Under his leadership, the cartel became a drug empire. At its height, the operation was said to bring in around $5 billion each year. But money like that doesn't stay quiet forever. In the early 80s, a US DEA agent named Enrique Kiki Camarena landed in Mexico. Camarena began digging into Galarno's operation. What he found was massive, vast marijuana farms and corrupt politicians neck-deep in the supply chain. He sounded the alarm, and authorities began to crack down hard. Gallardo wasn't just losing product, he was losing control. He wanted revenge. On the noon of February 7, 1985, Camarena and his pilot were abducted by 5 men as they left the American consulate in Guadalajara. They were tortured for over 30 hours, interrogated, beaten, broken, and then murdered. Their bodies were dumped like garbage. The message couldn't have been louder. The fallout, however, was immediate. Washington demanded answers. Mexican authorities, many of whom were in Gallardo's pocket, stalled, but pressure built and they were forced to act. In 1989, police finally came for him. They found Gallardo in his home. No shootout, no escape attempt. Calm and barefoot in a bathrobe. He was sentenced to 40 years for Camarena Vorder, among other charges. Time passed and new cartels rose, but Gallardo stayed behind bars, growing older, sicker, and quieter. In 2022, at 76, age and illness caught up with him. With his body failing him, he was transferred to house arrest.
Angie Valencia. She ruled the runway and the drug trade. Angie Valencia wasn't just a model. She was a queen pin. Crowned a beauty queen by day, trafficking cocaine by night, with models as her couriers and the catwalk as her camouflage. Born on May 25, 1977 in Colombia, Angie was always someone you noticed. With striking looks and effortless beauty, she stormed the beauty pageant world in the early 2000s, dazzling audiences and securing her place in the country's fashion scene. But behind the tiaras and photo shoots, something darker brewed. After splitting from her boyfriend, a notorious drug lord known in whispers as El Monstro, Angie made a decision few would dare. She would run her own game. And not just any game. She built a drug operation so sleek, so calculated, it earned her a chilling title, the Cleopatra of cocaine. She wasn't about shootouts or chaos. Angie ran her cartel like a CEO runs a tech startup. Her specialty? Smuggling cocaine from Argentina to England, hidden not just in luggage, but inside the very women she employed. But these weren't average recruits. Angie personally selected models from her fashion circles to act as drug couriers. With their high-end wardrobes and industry connections, they passed as innocent travelers. No suspicion, no red flags. Beneath it, her former lover's teachings were the real blueprint. El Monstro had deep ties with Mexican cartels and had shown her the inner workings, how to launder money, transport narcotics, and disappear when needed. And for a while, Angie did just that. She moved in silence and always 3 steps ahead, until she wasn't. In 2010, one of her couriers, a model named Ariel, was caught at Ezeiza International Airport in Buenos Aires with a massive load of cocaine. The bust blew Angie's whole operation wide open. Authorities were on high alert. A warrant was issued. The net was closing. Just 2 days after celebrating her 33rd birthday on May 27th, Angie was found in a small hostel, living under a fake name. The Queen of Cool, suddenly cornered. In court, she didn't flinch. Her expression was ice, silent, poised, and unreadable. But when the judge delivered the sentence, life in prison, her mask cracked. For the first time, her composure slipped. Tears welled up. That steely image shattered under the weight of finality. Her empire was gone. So was her freedom. George Gwell Thomas.
George Gewel Thomas. At first glance, you'd expect a man handed 7 life sentences to break down. But George Gewel Thomas didn't do any of that. His face was unreadable and stoic. George wasn't an average drug lord or street criminal. He was the head of one of the most feared factions in all of Africa, the 28s, a ruthless arm of the notorious Numbers Gang.
This syndicate began within the walls of South African prisons, but it quickly spilled out, stretching across the country and branching into several deadly divisions. Among these, the 28s are considered the gang's core, its bloodline. Their job? Carrying out executions, eliminating rivals, and proving loyalty through unspeakable acts. If a recruit didn't show enough cruelty, they were shoved into the lowest rung of the gang. There, abuse was used like a hammer, pounding out the weakness until something colder took its place. George thrived in that world. He didn't just survive, he ruled. Alongside his men, he crushed anyone who dared challenge their grip, especially across Western Cape Town. But that reign came crashing down when authorities arrested him on 55 charges, including 7 counts of murder. Even behind the thick walls of solitary confinement, George refused to stay quiet. Somehow, he managed to stay connected, making over 33,000 phone calls. From that dark cell, he continued giving orders, arranging hits on those who stood in his way. One name stood out among his targets: Curtis Esther. The gang tried to take Curtis out 6 different times but failed. Why the obsession? Curtis had agreed to testify in court, and that made him a threat. A threat George wanted erased, along with anyone else willing to speak against him. In court, George's lawyer attempted to rewrite his story, painted him as a simple man, claimed he didn't smoke, had a bank account, and earned a living selling fish. But the judge wasn't buying it. The verdict came down hard. 7 life sentences, each one tied to a life taken. Strangely, George didn't react. No tears, no outburst, just that same blank stare, like the sentence meant nothing to him. But prison has a way of peeling back the layers. After some time inside, something seemed to shift. George's tone changed. In a rare moment, he admitted, "If I had made different choices, I wouldn't be where I am now." Pedro Espinosa.
Pedro Espinosa. Inside the cold steel confines of California's San Quentin State Prison, faces rarely show emotion. That same chilling stillness could be seen on the face of Pedro Espinosa, a member of the 18th Street Gang. He sat motionless in court, even as the full weight of justice pressed down on him. His crime, taking the life of a promising high school athlete, and all because of a red backpack. The victim, Jael Andre Shaw II, was a junior at Los Angeles High. A standout student and a true all-rounder. He played football, basketball, baseball, and even the piano. He also ran track. His future was bright, practically glowing, and he had strong parents supporting his every step. His mother, Anita Shaw, was deployed overseas, serving her 2nd tour in Iraq, at the exact time her son's life was brutally cut short. Espinosa, born in the late 80s, wasn't just any troubled youth. He had entered the United States illegally and already had a track record. In 2007, he was arrested for gun possession and even assaulting a police officer. But the real error was the one that would cost an innocent boy his life, which came in the early part of 2008. Despite knowing his legal status and criminal history, authorities released Espinosa from jail 4 months ahead of schedule. That decision would turn fatal in less than 48 hours. At around 8:40 in the evening on March the 2nd, 2 Hispanic men emerged from a white vehicle. They approached Shaw, who was just a few blocks away from his home after a visit to the Beverly Center. The men confronted him, demanding to know what gang he belonged to. One of those men was Espinosa, the reason for the confrontation. Shaw's backpack, it featured a Spider-Man design and was red. That color alone led them to believe he was part of the Bloods' rival gang. Shaw, caught off guard, didn't answer. In response, they shot him where he stood. His father heard the gunshot from their home. He tried to call his son, unaware that it was already too late. When there was no answer, instinct took over. He ran outside and discovered what no parent ever should: his son lying lifeless on the pavement. He stayed by his side until medics arrived, but by 9:55 that night, Shaw was pronounced dead at the hospital. For Espinosa, this was his first day of freedom, and yet within hours, he had already destroyed another life. It didn't take long before he was tracked down and arrested. The legal process stretched on for 4 years, but in May of 2012, the verdict came down hard. Espinosa was sentenced to death. The judge, solemn and firm, announced that Pedro Espinosa would be executed within the walls of San Quentin by a method chosen by the law on a date the court would later determine.